How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Weather Sponge 5000, and in this video we're going to focus on the next few storm systems that are expecting to move through the United States and determine if we could potentially see a major northeast snowstorm as we approach the new year. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the current GFS computer model forecast over the next several days, and you see we're going to see quite a bit of a pattern change for the eastern half of the United States, where temperatures are going to be much warmer than average. We're going to see a strong southerly flow as a result of this pressure gradient between this low and this ridge. That's going to bring a strong southerly flow to bring a lot of that warm air further northward. So as a result, the chance of snow for much of the eastern half of the United States should remain low, at least over the next couple of days. However, we could see the chance of snow for the northeast more specifically as we approach a more long-term future, approaching potentially January 5th and 6th, where we could see just enough cold air and instability to where some snow could impact the northeast, more specifically New England, where we do see a nor'easter develop right around the January 6th to 7th time frame based on the latest depiction of the GFS model. And we do see heavy snowfall at times associated with this low pressure system, which shows that this snowstorm would be quite significant for a large portion of the northeast. And we do see that it impacts cities such as Boston, Hartford, and even New York City gets a little bit involved with snow. Now, of course, taking a look at the forecast hour, I'm going right around 240 hours out, which is approximately 10 days from now. So there's still a high amount of uncertainty and still a lot of days to really iron out the forecast. However, the European model also agrees with the GFS model when it comes to bringing a significant snowstorm to the northeast, where they both take a very similar trajectory as well as very similar strength of this low pressure system as it approaches the northeast, because the European model also expects a pretty significant low pressure system to move through the Midwest with a high amount of instability, where we see an abundance of cold air just to the west of this low pressure system, and of course that strong southerly flow bringing those warmer temperatures further northward to create an unstable environment for a significant snowstorm to not only impact the Midwest but as the northeast as well, where we do see that on the backside of this low pressure system we could see another round of instability develop, to where a low pressure system could develop right along the Gulf Coast and then bring some snow to the northeast. And both the European and the GFS model take this snowstorm to the northeast at right around the same time period, and both computer models are taking nearly the exact same trajectory when it comes to this low pressure system. So although the forecast is approximately 10 to 9 days out, the fact that the European and the GFS model are in pretty good agreement regarding the strength and the trajectory of this storm system as it approaches the northeast, as well as the area, as well as bringing up fairly similar forecast when it comes to the exact areas that would receive snowfall, it does certainly raise the certainty for a forecast that's 9 to 10 days out than, let's say, if only the GFS model forecasted this scenario. The fact that both of the two main computer models are forecasting a very similar scenario does raise certainty that something could develop along the northeast by the time we approach the January 5th to 6th time frame. And both of the computer models do agree that there's going to be just enough cold air right along the Midwest and just enough warm air along the East Coast to create an unstable environment for a new low pressure system to develop right along the Gulf Coast, where we could see just enough cold air for a snowstorm to develop in the northeast. But we're still 9 to 10 days out, so still a lot of uncertainty with the forecast, despite the fact that both of the two main computer models are in pretty good agreement regarding the exact area that receives snowfall as well as the trajectory of this low pressure system. We still need to keep in mind that there's still a high level of uncertainty when it comes to a forecast that's 9 to 10 days out. However, what will determine if we will see a significant snowstorm in the northeast is, of course, how much cold air will be locked in place by the time this low pressure system moves northward into the northeast, because of course if the temperatures aren't cold enough, then this would primarily be a rain event for most of the northeast. We do see that the European model does forecast that there will be just enough cold air, especially in the more interior portions of the northeast, where a large portion of Northeast should experience snowfall, including the bigger and more populated areas of Northeast, such as Boston and even Hartford, Connecticut gets a little bit involved, where we do see the snow move a little bit further southward than what we've been seeing this winter, where Boston and portions of New England do get involved with some snowfall in this scenario. But when it comes to cities like New York City, Philadelphia, and Washington D.C., it's primarily a rain event in the European model's depiction. But if we were to take a look at a GFS model's depiction, the GFS model does want to bring the snow a little bit further southward, but a very similar forecast to the European model. We're going to need to just wait and see how much cold air will be locked in place by the time we approach the January 6th timeframe to determine how large of an area of snow you should expect throughout the United States. Let me move on to the latest 18Z run, and we do see that the GFS model behind this trough that's expected to move through the Midwest does expect just enough of a strong northwesterly push to bring that Arctic air further southward and to bring a significant jet stream dip for enough of an unstable environment to develop for a significant snowstorm to impact the Northeast. And we do see that as these next few troughs move through the United States, we have this first one, and then of course this second one, and then this third one will eventually weaken the ridging that's going to be located right along the East Coast for the possibility of a more significant jet stream dip to move towards the East Coast, which would result in cooler temperatures, as the GFS model really does forecast that this ridge will eventually weaken, which will allow the possibility for cooler air to eventually move into Northeast, despite the fact that temperatures will likely be well above average for the next week or so for the eastern half of the United States. We're going to really also need to determine how much instability there will be. This will determine if we'll see a powerful enough low pressure system develop or not, which will play a role, of course, in terms of whether or not we see a snowstorm in Northeast. We're going to need to see this low pressure system become powerful enough to bring a heavy amount of snow to Northeast, because if there isn't enough instability, then there's less likely of a chance we're going to see enough convection associated with this area of low pressure for a significant snowstorm to develop. And of course, the position of this jet stream will be huge, and the position of this ridge will be huge, because if this ridge is any further eastward, then we're more likely to see the snow impact more of the west areas further westward, where more of the Midwest and the Ohio River Valley will get involved, where maybe even areas as far west as Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago will get involved if this low pressure system develops any further westward. And if this ridge is any further westward, that will play a big role in terms of trajectory, because if this low pressure system is too far to the west, then this will primarily be a rain event for the Northeast. But if we were to see this ridge a little bit weaker than anticipated, we could see mainly a snow event for much of the Northeast. So still a lot of factors to really determine whether to determine whether or not we're going to see a major snowstorm in the Northeast, and that really all depends on this ridge that's expected to move southward. The GFS model does expect a little bit more cold air to move southward by the time we approach a fifth, which is the reason why the GFS model expects the snowfall to impact areas a little bit further southward than the European model. It expects a much more powerful and cooler ridge move into the United States. While the European model does expect a ridge move southward into the United States, it doesn't expect the ridge to move as far southward, and doesn't expect the cool air to move as far southward as the GFS model's depiction. So as a result, the European model is forecasting the snow to be to impact areas a little bit further northward. We're going to need to pay close attention to the position of this ridge over the next several days to determine how much cold air will be in place to determine the amount of snowfall you should expect throughout the Northeast. So make sure to keep that in mind over the next several days. And a way to pay close attention to this is to really determine where the position of this ridge will be, how powerful this trough will be, because if this trough is a little bit more powerful, the northwesterly winds will be a little bit stronger, which will allow the cool air to move further southward thanks to a stronger northerly flow. So if you want to pay close attention to how much cold air will be in place by the time we approach maybe the 5th or the 6th, pay very close attention to this trough moving through as it moves ashore right around the Saturday, December 31st time frame, the strength of this low pressure system will play a big role in terms of how far south that cold air will move. So make sure to pay close attention to that if you're interested in determining whether or not we're going to see a major snowstorm in the Northeast. But taking a look at what the GFS model forecasts when it comes to snowfall accumulation associated with this significant snowstorm. So the GFS model does bring a heavy amount of snow throughout the large portion of the Northeast, but take this with a huge grain of salt because a lot could change between now and January 6th, where we do see a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow throughout New England. Even New York City gets a little bit involved in this scenario. The northern portion of New Jersey, southern portion of upstate New York, as we do see a large area of snow in the GFS model's depiction, but definitely take it with a grain of salt. But if the GFS model scenario were to be the correct one, this is the amount of snow you should expect. And taking a look at the European model also expects a very similar area of snow, but it expects the snow to be a little bit further westward, where we do see Pennsylvania and even portions of Ohio get a little bit more involved in this scenario, and we see the heavier snowfall just slightly further northward to where New York City does not get involved, but still very, very similar forecast, especially when you take in regard that this forecast is between 9 to 10 days out, and the area of snow is still relatively similar for a forecast that's that far out. So there's still a little bit more certainty for a forecast that's around 9 days out, but you still need to take this with a huge grain of salt. But if the European model's scenario were correct, there's the amount of snow you should expect. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. And of course, we're going to need to pay close attention to this major Midwest snowstorm that's expected to move through by the new year, where we do see that by between January 2nd and January 3rd, we could potentially see up to a foot of snow in some areas, as it seems like both the GFS and European model are pretty confident that we should see a major snowstorm move into the Midwest. Still a high level of uncertainty because, again, it's still fairly far out. We're going to need to really determine the track of and the position of this jet stream to determine where the heavy snow will fall, but I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. But this could dump a heavy amount of snow to the northern Midwest. Now, taking a look at the North Atlantic oscillation over the next several days. Now, you do see that over the past month or so, we've been deeply in a negative North Atlantic oscillation, which is part of the reason why we've been seeing record cold temperatures throughout the United States, as thanks to the fact that a negative North Atlantic oscillation typically does bring cooler than average conditions. But we do see that we're expected to rebound back into a positive North Atlantic oscillation, which makes sense why temperatures are expected to rebound over the next several days, as it seems like the jet stream winds are going to be a little bit stronger to trap that the cooler air further northward. But we do see that we're expecting this to remain in a positive phase, so temperatures should more likely than not be warmer than average over the next few weeks. But there's still, of course, always that possibility we could see a snowstorm despite the fact that we're in a positive North Atlantic oscillation. Taking a look at what typically happens during a positive North Atlantic oscillation or Arctic oscillation, pretty much those two oscillations go hand in hand. We do see that during a positive Arctic oscillation, we do see that jet stream winds are a lot stronger thanks to a stronger low and a stronger ridge, which traps cool air further northward thanks to the fact that the westerly winds are so strong that it prevents the cool air from having a possibility of meandering further southward without getting deterred by these strong jet stream winds. But for a negative Arctic oscillation, the opposite happens, where the jet stream winds are very weak, so there's more of a chance that the Arctic air moves further southward and the jet stream does not prevent it from moving further southward. But since we're expected to be in a positive Arctic oscillation phase by the time we approach January, then we're more likely to see slightly warmer than average conditions throughout the United States. Now, taking a look at my forecasts when it comes to the potential of a major northeast winter storm. So still a lot of days to really iron out the forecast. Way too early to jump into any conclusions, but I want to keep you guys aware that there could be that possibility of a winter storm right around the January 5th to 6th time frame to for the Northeast. So you definitely at least want want to be aware of this over the next several days. I like to give forecasts that are in the very long range future, so none of you guys get unprepared whether or not the possibility does occur or not. I want to give you guys all the possibilities when it comes to my forecasts, and you guys make your own decisions whether or not to prepare or not. And I want you guys to always not get caught off guard when it comes to possibilities, even though it's in the long range future. So make sure to at least be aware of this, and I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days as certainty will inevitably rise. So I'll keep you guys so stay tuned for further updates. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. I hope you guys have a great day.